Police warrant officer Sabelo Nkosi has testified today at the Madlanga Commission of Inquiry, where he cast a critical light on the conduct of senior officers during a Hawks operation that was linked to the murder investigation, that is, against alleged criminal figure Katiso, KT Molefe. Nkosi testified that Captain Barry Kruger mishandled a key assignment, failing to assert authority in his interactions with Brigadier Mua from the Directorate for Priority Crime Investigation.
The way I parked there when I arrived, or before we arrived at the address, we only sent one car. I parked the way I parked. And then you go and observe what is happening there. If you need to take pictures to prove that you were there, you can take pictures. You see that is the police. And then you come back. By that time, while you are busy walking there, you are doing your own observation and what. You come and tell us, this is what. And then we discuss, we make decision amongst ourselves. No, let's leave. Tell the brigadier and then we leave. That's it. Those people...
Warrant officer, sorry to interrupt you. And you said that took you only 5 minutes to do.
Correct.
So you don't understand what the other 40, 50 minutes was for?
What is that for, indeed?
Well, several witnesses linked to the investigation into businessman and murder accused Katiso, KT Molefe, are expected to continue giving evidence at the Madlanga Commission of Inquiry this week. Well, today's witnesses included Gauteng Traffic Police Airwing Chief George Raftopoulos and Warrant Officer Sabelo Nkosi, who we've just heard from the Hawks Tactical Operation Management Section. Let's talk further about today's proceedings. Bring into the discussion Professor Dumisani Mabunda, Security Analyst and Associate Professor in the Police Practice Department with the University of South Africa. A very good evening to you, sir. Thank you so much for making time to be on the SABC. So regarding Nkosi's evidence then, one of the things that did come up was this deployment of just one car to go check out KT Molefe's property in case the officers who were part of this operation were not legitimate Hawks members. And that was then addressed by Dumisani Mabunda, one of the leaders in the Hawks, who seemed at pains really to justify why, if he had such limited information, he was so clear, specific, as Advocate Sabelo was asking, that it should be 2 officers, 1 car that goes to confirm what's going on at the scene. What does that suggest about his conduct and the handling of what was a serious situation?
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity to give perspective with regard to what transpired at that crime scene. From the experience that I have is that when there's suspicion of a house robbery or the like, firstly, there will be no convoy of vehicles proceeding to the scene. One vehicle with members we call first responders will respond to that scene, and once they are at the scene and have observed, and perhaps there's a requirement for backup, they will do so. And if the crime has already taken place and there is a requirement for expertise, those first responders are the ones that will be calling for specific expertise. But in this instance, it appears that the commands and instructions were coming from a central place where those people who were issuing instructions were not privy to what was actually taking place. Hence, the helicopter just hovered there, and once they've established that there's no requirement for extra backup, they left the scene.
But surely it couldn't have been a random sort of let's say home invasion, if ultimately, as Dumisani Mabunda was saying, that he got the alarm basically from the now former head, who was then his boss in the Hawks, Godfrey Libea. If an alert comes from that high up in the Hawks line of chain of command, if you will, does that not automatically suggest that perhaps something more serious would have been afoot?
Yeah, from what I heard from the general that testified today, The first instruction was to go and check what was happening. So in that instance, there was no requirement for all the other officers that ended up at that scene. What is disturbing, in addition to this, is that after they have established that actually that was a legitimate operation by officers who were tasked to attend to that scene, there was a prolonged stay by other officers who I can regard as undesirable at that stage, because at that stage it was established that there was nothing sinister. So the question is, how did they decide to prolong their stay there, those who were not supposed to be at that scene?
Is there anything from the evidence that we've heard so far regarding the Hawks raid at Katiso Molefe's home, where he was ultimately, eventually arrested? From what we've heard, is there anything to suggest that police behaved inappropriately or members of the Hawks behaved inappropriately? Is there a clear sign, for instance, of interference, which is something that Godfrey Lebeya, the now former head of the Hawks, was accused of and has already denied in various media interviews?
Yeah, it's a good question. Various witnesses have already indicated that once it has been established that there was nothing requiring extra officers, the immediate action would have been for those other members to leave the scene and allow those who were authorized to conduct that operation. You can recall that those officers from Pretoria were apparently on their way to another operation. So they could have been relieved to know that their presence at that place was not necessary. So they could have easily proceeded to their next operation in Northwest. But for some reason that perhaps will be clarified as other witnesses are called, perhaps it will answer this prolonged stay by the other officers who were not authorized to be at that scene.
And let's talk lastly, before I let you go, sir, about Brigadier Mokwena from the Hawks. So he's been ordered to return at the beginning of proceedings today to come back to the Madlanga Commission because he's found to have lied under oath in his statement. It's regarding a WhatsApp group that was basically created during a police operation at Katiso KT Molefe's home. He was also arrested, it's worth pointing out, this Brigadier Mokwena, in connection with the murder of that engineer from Vereeniging, Armand Swart, in April last year. How much trouble is Lisiba Mokwena in right now? Yeah,
you see, if he lied under oath, there will be some consequences. And already there are red flags. The fact that he testified a few days ago and is required to come back after a few other witnesses, it indicates that the commission might be concerned about some of the things that he might said at that commission. So they want to see whether the witnesses that have testified after him are corroborating what he said. Perhaps that will indicate who is telling the truth and who is not telling the truth. So it is important that before they proceed, he comes and clarifies certain things that he vehemently stated that is the truth according to him.
And was there anything irregular that you found odd, perhaps, Professor Mabunda, regarding Mr. Mboto's insistence on WhatsApp, in the WhatsApp conversation during this Hawks operation? He wanted to know if indeed the men on the ground or the officers on the ground had been deployed by Lieutenant General Khumalo, and if so, who had said that was the instruction given? He was also pressed on that. Was that fair?
I don't think it was fair at that stage because he already issued an instruction to some officers. Because he was in an award ceremony somewhere, he could have relaxed knowing that there are officers that have been dispatched at the scene and they will update him with regard to developments. But it appears that he was trying to juggle being at the award ceremony and knowing what was actually happening there. This for me is very strange because if all the suspected house robberies or house invasions would be attended at this level where various forces are dispatched, I believe that South Africans would feel a little bit safer.
And that's the question, right?
This was a very unique...
It leads us to the question of whether those actions on Moto's behalf constitute interference, or at least an attempt to interfere. It
appears that there was an attempt to interfere with the investigation, but that will be unearthed by the Commission after hearing all the sides of the story.
Thank you very much, Dumisani Mabunda, Professor, who's also a security analyst and associate professor, by the way, in the Police Practice Department with the University of South Africa. Bottom of the hour, 6:30, Mpho is here with a look at weather for tonight and going into Tuesday.